and welcome to my very first anti-anti-intellectualism vlog. Quite a mouthful, but very on brand for me. I'm Dear Stalker Darling. This is a study in stories, and this is because I just love a good chatty vlog. I love watching vlogs where people just go about their day, or they're going on a trip or something, and they have a voiceover or whatever. They have a discussion about something meaningful or impactful, or they're talking about poetry, or they're talking about living slowly. And these vlogs are like a real mental reset for me, because so much of the online world these days feels so surface level. And this brings me to this idea of anti-intellectualism, which is this concept that it's saying that people today, the internet today, is causing people to be lacking in media literacy and critical thinking and deep thinking. And I'm always one to dig deeper. I'm always one to go down rabbit holes. And I think anti-intellectualism, you can very quickly and easily take 3 steps back and realize those skills are deeply rooted often in the humanities, in your English classes, in your history classes. And it's been my experience that those are the things that have been devalued over the last decade plus. This shows you to our discredit what that result looks like. So this is just my tiny little corner of the internet. This is my tiny little corner of the world. And this is me inviting you to join me in a rather impromptu, rather unscripted, if you couldn't tell already, moment to just think more deeply about something. I often, as I said, find myself down rabbit holes, and so I'm just inviting you to join me down one of them in hopefully an accessible way, in a friendly way, where you can just spend 10-15 minutes thinking more deeply. Now, this week's topic is about this question of what does it mean to be profound? And this thought originated from watching another little chatty vlog. I was watching this creator. She was devoting a lot of time to making crafts and things in this vlog. It was very chill, very cozy. And she was doing this because she'd spent so much time online in the weeks previous, and she'd done a lot of scrolling, a lot of doom scrolling. And she pulls out her journal, and she quotes from her journal this description of how it makes her feel when she's scrolling, and how it makes her feel when she's not scrolling, right? That fear of missing out, what are you missing? We all know how scrolling and deep scrolling makes you feel. And I just sat back and I was just so struck by her quote, because I have journaled almost every single day since 2009. I have so many journals, so many full journals. Honestly, it's been a journey. Anyone who's kept a journal will tell you that. And I've written about scrolling. I've written about doom scrolling a lot in the last few years. And nothing I've ever written sounded quite like the way, I did not sound as profound, as amazing as the way she described it. And so it got me thinking, and honestly, this isn't the first time I felt that way either. When I read other people's journals, I've felt this way too. I've got 2 really fantastic books. One is this amazing collection of women's journal excerpts throughout the year, and the other one is Sylvia Plath's journals, which are, I could make a whole video about that, and Ted Hughes and all of that. But point is, we have them. I'm reading them, and people will write things in their journals, and I'll be like, wow, that's incredible. My journals never sound like that. And so it brought me to this question of what does it mean to be profound? Why do my journals not feel as profound as these other ones? Is it because, I'm not Queen Victoria writing? Is it because, I don't use these words? So I started with this question by turning to my ever faithful Merriam-Webster dictionary, as one does. They define profound as one having intellectual depth and insight. This one felt kind of easy because, yes, this creator in her journal was using some rather large words. She was using some intellectual language. And my journals are often where there are no rules. It's just whatever my brain is going to dump on the page today. Some days I just write like, ah, with a bunch of scribbles. And it works. It gets the job done. It lets me vent my feelings. It records how I felt that day. And, you know, trying to spell words that I don't really know how to spell, I know how to use, but I'm not the best speller. And trying to do that in my journal takes away from the experience of journaling from me. There are plenty of other places, my poetry, etc., that like I spend a lot of time on word choice and things. And, that makes it maybe more profound. Poetry always feels more profound because there's such a preciseness in language. So there's definitely elements of that. But the second definition to profound is like characterized by intensity of feeling or quality and being very great or significant, all encompassing. And this got me thinking because it sent me back to this quote from Greta Gerwig's Little Women, one of my favorite movies. And at the end, Jo March is talking about how she's writing about essentially writing the book Little Women. She's writing about her stories with her sisters. And she says, there's probably nothing in it. It's probably not very important. Like, who would want to read about our lives? And her sister Amy looks at her and says, well, maybe by writing about them, that's how you make them important. It's how you make women's issues and women's lives. That's what makes them important, is writing about it. And I think about this quote like, oh my God, at least once a week, if not once a day, because it's so very true of, art reflects life and then life reflects art, that whole old adage. And, an artist spends time thinking about something and they put that experience on the page, on the canvas, and then a whole audience responds and sees that. And then they're spending time thinking about this and reflecting on it. And that creates it, that gives it importance, that gives, you put more time to this thought, to this idea, to this, corner of a person's life. And that gives it importance, that makes it more profound. And I think about this concept a lot too in the context of my beloved Taylor Swift, because I try to think back to when she started out and she's a teenager and she's writing these songs about the teenage experience. And at the time, it felt like she was the only one writing about like the real teenage experience. I would always compare it to like Katy Perry's Teenage Dream, which is a song with a lot of her music has a lot of like sexual innuendos and like rather risque, music videos, while Taylor was just like in love with the boy next door, wearing fancy dresses. And that was my experience. I mean, I wasn't wearing fancy dresses, but I wanted to be. And that was my experience. And to see that reflected in a Grammy Award-winning art form, just felt like my life and my feelings were important. And that's how it's always been with Taylor. She would bring up these things of like being 22 and being young and free and silly with your friends. Like, that's important. And yes, being angry about, heartbreak is important, and being sad, but also like the magic of the Eras tour, it wasn't just that like, yes, here's all of her most successful music and she can pull together a bunch of generations with it. It was that she pulled all these past versions of herself, all these stories that were important to her at one time and important to a lot of her fans at one time. And she said, these things are still important. These stories still matter to me and they still matter to you. And it was like, for the first time, it felt like a woman really embracing her youth and her childhood and her girlhood and saying, so often the media wants us to be like, oh, it was a phase. Oh, I'm so embarrassed by the things I did as a teenager. But like, no, that was your life. That was you. Embrace it. Love your awkward phases. Love your bad school pictures. That's you. You're beautiful. You were growing. You were learning. And the Eras Tour just like embraced that and embraced everyone at like every stage of where they were. At least that's how it felt to me. and still feels to me. In fact, at one of my Eras Tour shows that I was lucky enough to go to, my favorite thing about a Taylor Swift concert is that no matter how rehearsed, no matter how long, no matter how short, she'll always take some time to just chat with the audience, kind of like a chatty little vlog. And at this one, she talked about writing and how important writing was to her, but how the best part about writing for her was when she would say, "This is how I'm feeling. This has been my experience." And she put it out to the world. And thousands, if not millions, of people came back and said, "I felt that too. I had that experience too." And it just makes you feel not alone in the world. And it does that act of like this shared experience makes the experience more important and makes it more profound. In the art of sharing an experience, we make it more profound, we make it more important, and we make it even intellectual, and make it something worth studying. I mean, they've already done many business studies on the Eras Tour, but I'm sure there's some psychological studies and things coming at some point. But my point being here is that that vlog that I was watching and that creator with her journals, it wasn't just the fact that she, wrote in possibly loftier language than I would in my journal. I think what made it feel profound was the fact that here was this complete stranger to me saying she'd felt almost the exact same way that I did because of scrolling, because of the internet. And it just strikes you like, oh, this is a shared experience. Oh, I'm not alone in this. And in this world where so much is trying to isolate us and make us feel like we're not connected, those moments of connection are more profound than anything. And so that's my argument, and that's my thought about profound. It's about the art and the depth when we share things. That's what makes it profound. Even those old journals that I read, Sylvia Plath's journals, sometimes almost word for word, she has written things in her journals that I have written in mine. And that is profound. That here are two women who their lifetimes didn't even cross, and yet they're sharing this experience. And that's just magical and profound. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think about profound, about art, about the Eras Tour, about Little Women, anything that if you have questions, if anything, I just feel free to join me in just sitting and thinking for a while. And I really enjoyed this, and I hope to do more. Oh, and do the whole, like, share, subscribe, whatever. Honestly, highly recommend sharing. A lot of my friends, we start like these. I've started so many book clubs by accident, but like some of my friends, we share like an article or a thing, and then we like talk about it. And so feel free to just even share the question of this vlog with a friend and talk about it, or a coworker over lunch. I have a bunch of coworkers I've harassed into joining me for a lunch once a week where we just talk about really big topics and things. So invite others to take a moment to think more deeply, and I'll see you next time.